All right.
There we go.
Sounds like we're recording. We are live. Can we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I would like to make a motion to approve, to add an agenda item to approve Liz Wilson's most recent proposal. I think it's slightly different than the one that's posted here.
So about 20 minutes ago, I think we uploaded the most recent one. Is that correct, Heidi? About half an hour ago?
Yes.
We uploaded the most recent one,
Okay.
but it's too soon for it to expect everybody to have looked at it. So I think that, so the most recent one is there.
Okay. But we don't want to approve it.
Unless everybody feels they've looked at it.
I just saw that it was
Yeah.
posted.
Yeah. Okay, so let's punt it.
So there is a, if I may interject, there is an opportunity to discuss it and look at it. And at that point in time, if you so choose to amend the agenda, that would also be.
Oh, yeah. We can think about
All right. Can we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
it.
Second.
Great. All in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
He's opposed?
No, he's not opposed. That was a lie, right? Correct? That was not.
That was
It was a
not.
lie.
It was
Okay.
not.
No, can you hear me now, Susie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I was
Yeah.
having a little audio trouble, so I'm here now.
Yes, and you've approved the agenda, correct?
Yep, that's fine with me.
Yes. Okay. So Heidi, am I correct that there are no public comments at this point?
Correct.
I see a member of the public. Did that person just want to listen or, okay, just making sure. Reports and comments, 5.1. Jonathan is going to lead us again in a discussion of our board priorities and goals. You want to start, Jonathan?
Well, I'm can't pull that up now. Can somebody else pull it up?
Yes. We can all pull it up.
And just to confirm, the last version of this was from the email on October 9th. Is that?
Oh, we can't pull it up. I'm sorry. I could, you can.
Yeah, well, I shared the Google Doc with everybody.
Yeah, we
Just
have
for a
it.
second.
We have it, and I printed it.
I just want to make sure it's where it was.
So,
Yeah.
Jonathan, can you tell us the date that you last updated it? Katie's
I
asking.
think that was Saturday or Sunday.
Okay,
I think
yeah,
probably
that-
Saturday.
So I have a printed copy, and it looks like
It would
Susan has.
be updated because
I can try to share my
you shared the document, not a copy. Okay.
All right, we
Yep.
all have it in front of us.
Okay, so what I tried to do was reflect the comments received in our last meeting. And then also separating out certain things and then adding a little more about the specific goal at the beginning of the document, or at the beginning of the goal itself, I'm sorry. And then I tried to fill in, what I kind of thought some of the key elements of each goal were in line with comments. And then I circulated that. So I don't have it in front of me. I can't see if there were any additional comments made by you guys in terms of adding things that you think we're missing. And that's all we need to do, I guess, is receive additional comments, and you guys go ahead and put them in there so that we can move forward then and finalize it for the next meeting, and then go ahead and improve it.
So I've got an okay with Dwayne and Susan and me, and Katie, you had a chance to decide whether you have comments.
I think, I'm trying to remember whether it was, there was something that was double A. There's something that was put there twice, I think related to housing, but I don't think it's really a big problem.
Super important.
Yeah, so it gets double the
Attention.
attention. No, just, from a point of having things twice is probably not, but it might not have been this document, it might have been the last version of it, so.
Yeah, I think it fell in both the part about teacher retention and then the bond. And I tried to separate the two, as in, kind of that the teacher retention part, the job is to kind of make sure that we have good housing policies and a sustainable housing quote unquote system, like I'll call that the administrative part of it. And then I think the bond part is just making sure that those are adequately spent and used and those kinds of things. So more of kind of the oversight of how the bond funds are used in the housing portion. But then on the retention side, making sure that, we're getting together that strategy document. We have metrics, we have goals, we have clear policies, those kinds of things. That's the way I tried to represent it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think we need to have it in two places, but if everybody else feels strongly about it, it doesn't really matter, just in the interest of tightening it up.
I'm for tightening things.
I mean, I think to me, it sounds slightly different because I think developing a clear housing policy is different than just giving houses. So,
Well, but the bond, under the bond, it talks about the strategy. Let's see, where is it? The exact wording, sorry, I don't have my mouse, so it's impossible for me to move around here.
deployment of housing funding.
Yeah, develop a housing strategy, including a vision, mission, strategic priorities, initiatives, indicators, guidelines for the deployment of the housing funds. And I don't know, to me, it is all encapsulated in that, and it's a little repetitive, but
I mean, I guess, I just want to make sure that we're clear that part of attracting and retaining is having a transparent process for how people are eligible for housing, and if that's part of the policy in the bond, that's fine. I just want to make sure that's clear, that
So should we keep it as it is and not make the change given? Does that keep it, does that satisfy you?
yeah.
Is that okay?
yeah, it's fine, it's repetitive. To me, it reads the same, but it's repetitive.
Repetitive is not the worst sin we can do.
No, but we got a lot of bullet points here. This is a lot, so I just want to, make sure that we're not going to interpret things differently by having them listed two different places in kind of different ways. I still view it as a subset of the whole housing strategy. The policy is one aspect of the housing strategy, but if you feel it's important to delineate that in particular, that's fine too.
Wayne and Jonathan, are you agreeing with
I'm fine as it's presented.
as it's
It's still
presented?
the case.
Jonathan, you're okay with keeping it as is, not making a change?
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm fine with that.
okay, all right. All right, and then.
I think we're close enough unless there's other comments, and then let's just prove it and go on.
So I guess ideally, we would have had this as an attachment so the public could open it and follow it along with us. We're not able to open it.
Well, then I would suggest that we post it as on our website as well as a board priorities,
That's what I'm
once we approve it.
Right on the website. And we can put this into the meeting minutes as well as attach it
Great.
after this conversation. I'll share it with Heidi right now,
Right behind the baseball stadium.
and we can.
But I think we can, if we agree on the text, I think we can just post it and approve it at the next meeting under consent action items.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, and just to be clear, so everyone knows what we're talking about, since it's not posted,
Right.
is that this is a second draft, or we're gonna get a second reading of a draft of what this board views as its priorities for this year, this current academic year. So it will be something that we'll have to, of course, revisit to get buy-in from the new board when they are seated in, I guess it's early December or late November, whenever the number of days is after the election that you can seat them. But it is basically what we're saying we will be focused on this year
Thank
and review ourselves against.
Thank you for sharing. Once I realized it wasn't there, I'm glad, I wanted to explain what we were doing.
Cool.
Okay.
So we need to vote?
No.
No?
This is-
No, it's public information and it'll be posted on the website right under the board priorities from last year.
Perfect.
It'll say board priorities for this year.
Perfect.
And then it'll also be baked into this agenda as well as be part of the minutes moving forward.
Perfect.
But let's make it its own file, so we don't continually have the prior years.
It'll be 2 lines, it'll be right under, and then each year as we do this, it'll be like 2021, 21, 22, 22, 23. So that the public can see what we've been working on. 1, 2.
Okay, so, Jonathan, are you gonna have to leave, after this discussion, or are you gonna stay with us for the bond update?
No, I've got here probably about another hour and a half. Well, maybe not that, but an hour and a half. So I should get close to the end.
Great. Okay, so 5.2 bond update. Ellen Woods Mitchell,
Well, I believe Damian Spar will lead the bond update, and then Ellen will join in to update the Howland Road project, which is coming to a close. It's the first major acquisition within this bond effort. So, and it's pretty cool and pretty special, so that deserves a little bit of time. And we thought Daniel a shout out for flagging that and adding it to the bond update. But as in the past, I believe Bob and Damien will be driving for the bond update.
great. All right,
Good evening, everyone. If I can get the screen share disabled, I'll be able to share my screen if you'd like.
Make it multiple.
I think Ellen is saying that she'll do a screen share first.
Okay, so do you have the option now?
Let me check for you. I sure do. Thank you. Great. You can see my email. That's fantastic. Yeah. So can everyone see an agenda?
Yeah.
yes.
Very good. So I'm here to start off on behalf of Daniel from Gateway Management, Spar from SiteLogic. We are your owner representative team. Our agenda tonight is to go through some deferred maintenance work progress, talk about budget targets that we talked about last month, discuss design progress by project area, as well as next actions. In terms of progress and deferred maintenance, Hazelden has continued progress with work as follows, and you're going to see photos of this after this slide. At the elementary school, replacement of terraced metal stairs is substantially complete. Roofing repairs also substantially complete, as our roofing repairs at the middle school. There's some work on heat tape at the northeast entry. That's to prevent snow buildup on a ledge above the entry. It's a safety issue. That's ongoing. Asphalt paving extension at the high school is substantially complete, as are the science wing roof repairs. The concrete repairs for life safety are substantially complete as well. I'm sorry, for safety. And the light pole and head replacements is ongoing. Finally, we're putting in no-touch faucets and flush valves in all of the school buildings. They are substantially complete at the middle and high school and ongoing at the elementary school. There's some additional work being set up to occur with concrete and asphalt repairs. There's some metering going on at the bus barn for electrical service and design. There's a vent pipe that needs to be repaired at the high school, at a high school toilet room that's causing some concern over there that we'll be able to take care of pretty quickly. And some other things that we're doing among our next phase of deferred maintenance, which we'll be outlining for you as that gets developed. Here are photos of some of the completed work. The top is the elementary school terrace stair replacement, which is complete. The bottom is high school roofing. On this page, you can see some of the work that was completed at the middle school with the roof repairs, and the middle school, some fixtures for no-touch faucet operation and asphalt repairs, and I believe that's at the bus barn. There have been some temporary repairs done until we can take stairs out and do a fully completed job with the inclusion of ice melt systems over at the high school. As you walk down toward the elementary and middle schools, when you come out the doors at the main office, if you turn right, You can come down the stairs that are in the upper right-hand corner and also shown at the bottom. If you turn left, you're going to be barricaded and blocked from that because those stairs are in too great of a disrepair for temporary repairs. Some of the upcoming work that we're looking at right now, and that will be done as quickly as possible, is bilingual and ADA signage program upgrades, concrete repairs, which you can see at the high school, or I'm sorry, the middle school sidewalk there, some window replacement and repairs, and rooftop unit replacements, which are in the works right now. Before we get into design progress, we're going to talk a little bit about budget targeting. These numbers are essentially the same targets as we presented last month. They will vary as we go, and as we have our projects more defined, you're going to see these numbers get more defined. I think last month we had something off in one of our numbers. We intended to have a range and we didn't have it, but we have it now. So for deferred maintenance, right now, the project cost, that's cost of construction, including design, permitting, and soft costs, that's up to $15 million. Safety and security is budgeted at a target of $1 to $3 million. Classroom and learning environments are budgeted at $3 to $5 million, and that excludes potentially $500 to $1.25 million per school discretionary that's being considered within the administration recommendation to the board. Net zero initiatives are budget targeted at $1 to $3 million. District theater and performing arts, those are budgeted right now, as we said last month, from $2 to $3 million. I think that many of you may have seen in the news and in some publications this week, there were some meetings about the use of the theaters. There was a note by the writer that talked about a number in the $6 million range. Upon researching that a little bit, what we found out was that there was a reference to the budgeting process as it went through bond, et cetera. And that was simply an old number that was considered at one point in time and not accurate as to where we are today. This number is the same number that we've reported a month ago and that we've been considering for some time. Just wanted to make sure. Yes.
On this subject, can you clarify whether that's safety, whether that's a dressing room, what will that $2 to $3 million for this district theater cover?
Right now, it is some minor, it may be some minor alterations, but it's really renovations and upgrades to things like rigging and seating and things like that. So it's more of an auditorium upgrade and refresh and less of a programming expansion. It does not have any new space in those numbers. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
New entrance or any of that kind of stuff. Right. One
Correct.
question, Damien, that you mentioned soft costs under deferred maintenance. And I was just curious, where do the consulting and design costs go in this? So that they're not listed anymore as are they included within each line item?
Yes, they are. And it's an important distinction, and I appreciate that question. When we talk about project costs, and that's what this is, these are project costs. They include the construction costs and what we call soft costs. Soft costs are the design, the permitting, owner's representative, furniture, technology, any kind of special testing that we need, really anything that is non-construction. So what the numbers that you're seeing along the side of the page are project costs, and those are inclusive of those consultant costs. So you should consider those as all in for construction and other related costs.
And I think, Damien, it's important to note that these remain budget numbers that we work towards. And as each scope is better defined through the process that you're going to talk about in terms of where we are on design status, these numbers will get more and more refined and become less and less ranges.
Exactly.
I just wanted to make sure that was clear for everybody, that they were broken up, and it includes, there isn't an extra line item at the end of the day that says, you know, all this other stuff.
No, thank you. That very important. And there's an important line item at the bottom when we get through this. Right now for bus barn upgrades, again, bus barn upgrades here, that's renovation, repairs and upgrades, not a new bus barn, $3 to $5 million. Athletics and recreation, $1 to $2 million. Where we have consideration for the new building is the new cottage and potential home of district admin offices, currently targeted with the idea that it would sit between the middle school and the elementary school. In that hill area is one of the several places being considered in a top candidate location. That's $17 to $20 million of total project costs. And when you add all that up, it adds up to, the right side adds up to more than 45 million, the left side just a little bit under. Really what we're talking about targeting among all that is about $45 million. This excludes approximately $20 million of other discretionary funds, which would be part of the class, which would include, that 20 million would include those classroom and learning environment discretionary funds in there, should the board elect to consider it that way. These continue to be our target budget areas for project costs, which we will continue to refine. So for example, we're refining deferred maintenance so that that's getting narrowed down pretty closely. The safety and security will follow very closely behind that, as well as, and I think they're going to kind of go almost in the order that you see as we move toward really a concept and a site location for the new cottage. That's going to start to drive conceptual estimating that will refine that large number at the bottom.
And I think, Damien, it's safe to let the board know that as we refine these budgets, and if things are coming in over or under, and there are decisions to be made about going outside the boundaries of these budgets, you know, the board or the each of the subgroups of the board and the Tiger team or the admin team are all brought into that conversation so that the priorities can be determined.
Great comment. Thank you. This is the target budget areas, including all costs, but in this case, it's either construction or purchase, et cetera, and soft costs for housing acquisition and the housing component, which Ellen and Bob are going to talk about in a moment, but acquisition up to 45 million, unit repairs and improvements up to 5 for a total of up to 50, again, excluding discretionary funds. So this is where we are standing in the design process for each project area. Cunningham is proceeding on design for the next phase of deferred maintenance, and that includes working closely with Hazelden as we're preparing those numbers for consideration. Pardon me. We have our safety and security design consultant on site right now with their survey to complete in October, which is really going to finalize information that's come from that survey and the study that was done some time ago, so that the district can choose what it would like to do in safety and security design. We already know that we're going to be doing camera work and vestibule work, as well as something that could fall into deferred maintenance or safety, and really we'll figure out where those go. But those are door replacements, as well as upgraded hardware and things like door frame repairs. We may also, within that safety and security design, put our signage program that we talked about earlier. Again, these things are going to be flexible as they move among the pots of money, but they will be properly prioritized. So those are very high priority pieces right now. The principals and their selected staff for input, for design group input for the elementary school, middle school, and high school are meeting with Cunningham and Gilbert Sanchez to start to really lay out the design for classroom and learning environment upgrades. We continue to talk to Holy Cross and work on our net zero initiatives. We are doing a survey of roofs right now for solar capacity. We have the options of solar capacity on the roofs, solar capacity in more open areas, such as potentially over buses, if we want to park the buses and have canopies over that are solar, or even in open spaces, which you don't have a lot of. Other options are to purchase solar off-site. So that's all part of really net zero, moving toward, or I should say, moving away from all use of fossil fuels to electric and reducing consumption. We talked a little bit earlier about district theater and performing arts study and the meetings that were occurring already to get an idea of how the theater might be used in the future and considered as we think about how expansive those particular upgrades are. Minimally, we have to improve that theater as it sits there, really just to update the systems and finishes. And that is short of those alterations that we discussed or any additions. So we know there's a base scope that we absolutely need to do, and that's gonna get under design. However, we're gonna consider that so the board can have input as to whether there's an expansion of that scope. The firm has been chosen for the environmental survey around the bus barn, so that as we do those bus barn upgrades, we can understand what we're dealing with up there and the extent that to which we change circulation patterns, paving, et cetera. There are meetings to be scheduled for athletics and recreation. That is one of the areas that really is a lesser priority because of some of the other much higher priorities. And survey work is to begin for the site selection of the new cottage and administration offices. We have the design RFP under development. I anticipate that we'll be talking about that being out when we next meet, as well as the geotechnical investigation work. Importantly, we've done a couple of things at looking at design standards with Cunningham and Gilbert Sanchez. So design standards for the elementary, middle, and high school for finishes, furniture, and architectural components are being developed, meaning standardizing flooring, standardizing ceiling tiles, starting to standardize maybe colors in a building, standardizing room names and numbering, because we're going to make sure room names and numbering are taken care of through this whole process too, as a part of safety and security, and really as a part of taking your buildings to the next step in their lifetimes. We're also making sure that furniture plays into this. So it isn't meant to be so much restrictive, but to leave us with some standardization and allow the ability for the district to, when this project is over, refer to a document and say, this is what we do here when we're making minor changes as we continue on or buy furniture or make other minor upgrades. Other actions that are happening, I mentioned that Cunningham and Gilbert Sanchez are meeting with building principals and staff for classroom learning environments. We talked about safety and security and expediting that. Mentioned the information about net zero with Holy Cross and Core. And we're doing a lot of work with Linda Warho's office and to work on the project accounting system. We're continuing to work toward development of final project scopes, which provide budgets and schedules. We do know there will be a significant amount of work in 2022. And really, as I mentioned, that safety and security component, along with the deferred maintenance, is being expedited at the top of the list. I believe that takes us to really a place where Bob and Ellen can jump in to talk about housing, and we can have Ellen's report. I'd be happy to take questions now or wait until the end.
Katie has a question.
I have a couple of questions, Damian. First of all, on the net zero initiative, I know we're moving into housing next, but has that been considered as an aspect of housing as well? Are we looking at that as, extra.
We are talking about how that plays into housing. It has not yet been firmed up. I'll let Bob address that a little bit further if you'd like, Bob.
Yeah, I believe the question was about how are we integrating net zero in the housing. One of the things that's been revealed through the McKinstry report is our building envelopes for some of our freestanding residential units are reaching the effective end of their lives. And so that enables us to look at window replacement, siding replacement, insulation, roof materials, et cetera. Also in those areas where we might have land that would accommodate the installation of any type of solar array, we're looking at those resources as an opportunity to take some of our freestanding product or freestanding residential units and limit their consumption. We're also, as a part of ongoing either initial or ongoing appliance and things like fixtures and toilets and lighting, and looking at much more energy efficient equipment and materials as a part of that as we go through and look at our refurbishment of our residential units.
Thanks. My next question was about the cottage location. I know it's still in development, but I guess what I'm wondering is, does that location allow for the continuation of the current size of the cottage? Or is there sufficient capacity there for a larger facility? Where does that play out right now?
That site was, as we went through the site selection, the site between the middle school and the elementary school provided the greatest amount of flexibility because of the topography and the land that lends itself to a smaller structure from the street side that could extend downhill, and you could have what might be a 1 or 2 story building from the street side, if you will, be a much taller building, much like the way the middle school functions in terms of its street side elevation is much shorter, if you will, than the play yard side. So the short answer is that site has probably the most flexibility, and it meets some of the needs of being, right at the corner of Main and Main.
Okay, so do we know if it's big enough for our current? Or, I mean, I know they're still in the beginning of the design phase related to that site, but.
And when you say current, you're probably including the classrooms in the elementary school.
No, I'm including the current number of children that are in the cottage facilities, whether it is the daycare portion or the pre-K portion. Are we allowing for growth in that, knowing that the community demands for pre-K and childcare is continuing to grow? Where is that site in regards to the capacity for children?
That site has more than sufficient capacity for current programming, plus to anticipate future needs as well.
Because
and that'll be borne out as we bring on a design firm and we confirm that through further design process.
when you look at the footprint of that site, and that you can effectively get an extra floor out of that footprint, that's what gives us that capacity. Because instead of creating a basement where you don't want to put children, you create a lower floor that's got a whole wall of that area that is exposed to light and playground. So that's part of the idea for the site, but it does have the capacity for not only current and not only the administrative offices, but also some addition. Now, if there was a thought that we wanted to triple the size of your accommodations, that gets a little bit different, but expansion versus duplication, are different things. So we intend to allow for expansion as necessary because we don't want to overbuild, but we find that is really an efficient area of the site that is not eating up other play areas and things that become important for us to have on our landlocked site.
Dave, Dwayne.
Damien and Bob, two quick things. One's a statement, one's a question. First one, on the athletics piece, it reminds me of a couple of years ago, a good body of work between the city and the school district, talking about the expansion of the arc directly across the street. The Spark, which is the nonprofit group that helped to generate first funds for the current arc. Conversations with the adjacent private property owners, the Crown family. I just want to make sure that that's on the radar from a strategic perspective. I think it's still got some life. And as we move forward here, it might be helpful. Bob, you know some of the Spark folks, obviously, Scott Ryder, among others. That's statement number one. The second is a question real quick. Do you guys have, I think this might have been mentioned the last board meeting, you have like a CPM schedule or some sort of Gantt chart that at a macro, very high programmatic level that illustrates in big chunks the movement of the work over the course of the next 3 to 5 years. It just reminds me of the bond requirements by law, the consumption of funds over a certain specific time frame. And probably it's helpful to have a communication piece, internal, but also with the community as we track against that larger CPM schedule. Do you guys have something like that already coming together?
We don't have that put together yet, Dwayne. It's a good point. One of the things we're focused on, and it might be a little bit too myopic right now, is we're really focused on the 22 building season. And so what we're focusing on right now in terms of our design decisions for the repairs and maintenance is what are those scopes of work that we can get accomplished, and where within those scopes are there current supply chain restrictions. And so we're actually looking at our deferred maintenance as the first priority of work, and trying to track design and information needed to those items that have the longest lead items based upon what's occurring in our current supply chain. By way of example, if you look at the cottage and administration building, if we go to prefabricated steel trusses on that, we know we're over a year out, or maybe even 18 months out from being able to get that. So we would not look to do that work. So our current focus is to try and really address what we're doing in 22, while still planning for that window you talked about. You floated your bonds in, I believe it was April of 21, and you properly stated there's a 3-year commitment and 5-year spend on those, with perhaps some extensions to that. But we're keeping that very mindful as we look at projects that can be executed in our community, and with some of the constraints our community has, those projects that can be executed within that time frame.
So, and it is accurate to say that we do not have a CPM schedule, because I do not have it in CPM software. We do have that schedule laid out so that we can see how we get from point A to point B, again, with lots of work in 2022. We're still going to have work in 2023 summer. What we will do, though, is I will put some information together on that so that we can show you what we'll use target timeframes for construction, and we'll show that to you next month, because that's something that we are working on. And like Bob said, we talk about it every week when we have our Tiger Team meetings with the administration, and we are paying attention to it. So I'd be happy to demonstrate what we have and put that into a CPM.
Yeah, all of it makes sense, a ton of it, really appreciate that. I'm just kind of almost thinking about just a simple communication with the broader community as we move forward. But I completely agree with the approach you guys are tackling. It definitely builds some momentum and builds some confidence, and starts building a bit of a story of future progress. So great stuff. Just looking for some combo tools with the community. That's all.
And the more I'd invite the board and the administration to think about anything that they'd like to see. Bob and I have some folks at our disposal that we can put together some of that communication information and provide it to the district to communicate. So continue to think that way. We appreciate that.
Yeah, I think something ongoing that is on our website that kind of just tracks, like we've spent this much on such and such, this is to go. Pretty general, but also pretty informative would be,
Almost
Like a
graphic type.
yeah, yeah.
And it, you know, it's reminding me of what the last set of big bonds that I think replaced. There was some, and I don't have any actual knowledge here, but there was some discussion about some of the funds being used here and there. And eventually, I don't believe all of those commitments came about.
Yeah,
And if that's true, I'd hate for us to commit that sin again.
exactly.
And so we
Yeah,
kind
it's
of.
really just that first page that you show in your, that you have continued to show us the ranges. I mean, as we get more specific with each of those, that,
That added a timeline to that, yeah.
yeah,
I think we can add a very generic and simplified time frame to that. We've already, I mean, I've actually done it in some of the housing components over the life of the bond, so we can add the other components to it as well.
great idea. I think that'd be nice. I agree.
One thing that I want to make sure the boards knows that your owner representative team's really focused on is leaving the district with an action plan going forward. So that, you know, there's active and ongoing and annual deferred maintenance. So our intent, both on the housing front and on the existing facilities front, is to actually have a roadmap. Dwayne, you would know it as a reserve study in your other life. But something that's really a tool for the district so that they're knowing how much money to set aside on an annualized basis for your existing assets and knowing when you should be applying those funds to those assets to maximize the life cycle and the use of your existing improvements.
That would be really helpful. Great, thank you.
I'm gonna go through housing real quick
Yeah.
before Ellen talks about 834, because what she's talking about is a lot more fun than the stuff I talk about. So I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit and just report that we had a housing subgroup meeting a week ago. We got some really good direction from that group. We spent some time just going through some initial needs assessments. I think actually some of the things that, although we couldn't see them, some of the things that were in your board priorities were born out of some of those discussions that a couple of your board members were a part of during that housing subgroup. So we feel very good about the work that we're doing with that subgroup. You know, they're both in terms of the sort of micro and tactile ongoing things, and then the aspirational aspects. And we'll be reporting back to that group, and I think you know, Dwayne or Jonathan can chime in on it, but our ultimate goal is to bring to the board this sort of housing action plan and housing mission that I think was embodied in some of the board goals that you were discussing earlier. To that end,
That is some sooner rather than later for a, you know, wish list of what we would like to see, because as we continue to go through getting these letters of intent authorized, I think it's really important to know what the goal is.
absolutely.
The need is.
And that exact same thing expressed by your board member representatives in that housing subgroup. I think I would leave it as giving us a leash for a little while, but we've got to come back in and really get the priorities set.
And I see letters of intent for purchase, and I think those are on our consent agenda. Is that correct, Dave?
Yes, for discussion.
I believe.
Great.
Yeah, it's just a matter of, you know, we do have the opportunity to look at two properties that are under consideration. Dr. Ball would explain that further later, but they're completely non-binding. And of course, the district council, Richard Bump, very, very trusted and valuable and competent advisor, is along in every step with us in those actions. We've completed our West Ranch septic redesign. Actually had a site visit with the county today. And the county environmental engineer stated that he would make this the #1 priority on his current submission list and put us ahead of any other permits that he's looking at, which might upset some others, but it's really good for us. We're going out to bid with 4 subcontractors for that. We've expanded the facility to its full potential capacity, which would allow us to add 7 additional bedrooms on site and additional units. And we would obviously be coming back to the housing subgroup and the board itself with any of that action being taken, but it's being repaired and redesigned with the future in mind. There's ongoing improvements relative to livability. Those have really been handled on a bit of a one-off basis because we're really trying to consolidate into all of the action items that are coming out of the McKinstry report. Last week I had a final meeting with McKinstry for some of my final changes before I feel comfortable submitting that report to the district administration for their review. It does include about $4.5 million worth of improvements. Does not touch a lot of the fixtures and finishes. It's a lot of envelope and systemic improvements. To earlier board member questions about the net zero things, I mentioned, replacement of window systems, insulation, roofing systems being incorporated into that McKinstry report. That's pretty much, can't remember if there's anything else. Next slide, Damien, on housing. No, there's not. Okay, so let's turn it back. Yeah, let's turn it back over to Ellen, and Ellen's going to give you guys an update on 8:34.
I have a question about West Ranch. Was the reason we had put the brakes on it a few years ago and haven't looked at it for a few years, was it that a matter of money? And now that we have the bond, we're able to?
Partially, but I think some of it was that water.
The bridge too far.
Yeah.
The infrastructure required to tie.
Yeah, there's about $500,000. I mean, I'm estimating $500,000 of water and sanitary sewer improvements on that property for its current function and the ability to add those 7 additional bedrooms.
But then beyond that, I think, right, Susie, beyond that, we studied a few years ago with Gilbert Sanchez,
Yeah.
the concept of just completely abandoning the septic and our well water and just, actually not well water, but just tying in septic back to the Aspen consolidated. And that was multiple millions, and a lot of property owners having to consent
Yeah.
for our passageway to get there, and so it's just a bridge too far.
This didn't relate to the community school water rights.
That's a different issue.
Completely, that's not the same location.
Completely different, and that's also something that's being looked at is, are there opportunities on that site?
Okay.
Thank you.
You're
Okay,
welcome.
now go to Ellen.
She gets the fun part. Go for it, Ellen.
Pretty pictures. This is awesome.
So exciting.
I like how we did it. It's fun.
Is Ellen,
Are you speaking, Ellen?
is she muted or is she not speaking? or-
Sorry, can you all see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So I have the lucky position to present a nearly finished project on behalf of the bond group. This is an exciting, sorry, just adjusting my volume. We have Hallam 832, 834, and 836. These are 3 separate structures, hence the 3 different addresses. This is recommended to us by the fire department for fire safety because we have 3 separate entry points into the buildings, or 4 actually. And you can see there's some passageways in the middle. There are 7 units in this property. We have 1 1-bedroom, 2 2-bedrooms, 3 3-bedroom, and 1 4-bedroom. They range from 710 to about 1,100 square feet. They are somewhat cozy, but have great views, and many of them are multi-level. There's some historic charm that has been preserved on the corner unit. So if you are looking at the property from the street on the left side, you will see there's a property that has the wood shingles. It has an original chimney that has been cleaned up. It is totally decorative. It also has the original windows, the single pane, and there's even a stained glass feature on the side of the property. And as you can see, some beautiful flourishes around the entryway. Some of the safety and accessibility features and functions to highlight is there's hardwire fire suppression system. We have a snow removal contract in place. There's some heated gutters along the edges there. As you can see, there's some narrow walkways between the buildings. So that's a high priority for us to keep it easily accessible. There is one 3-bedroom unit that's ADA compliant. And that's on this ground floor here where you can see the wood post. And so there is from the sidewalk a ramp that goes to that unit if need be. That unit comes with a handicap parking spot in the back. That is the far spot along the wood fence. There are 5 additional parking spots. There is a trash shed that looks kind of like a garage door there. And there is 1 storage closet per unit. You can see those doors are open on the far building. To speak to some of the net zero and just energy efficient conversations, this is right next to the 8th Street bus stop, which is conveniently located and easy to get into town and down Valley. There is also a WeCycle station right on the corner there. You can see the Hallam property is in the background. So having a WeCycle station also at the middle school, there's easy access to and from the school. And I just threw in a few images of the interior finishes. You can see they're quite lovely. We have LG appliances, stainless steel in all of the kitchens. We're gonna do a 4-year warranty on all of those. There are Marvin windows in all of the non-historic units, as well as Mohawk flooring. I am striving to have leases start December 1st, and that's somewhat, it's a little bit of ways away, but we're waiting on a certificate of occupancy and to do our own safety checks and punch lists here at the district before putting staff into them. I think you all know this project started long before I started working here, so I want to thank all of those who have been involved. This is a joy to present and the beginning of many more projects. And Greg Woods and his team are very efficient and capable, as well as Bob and Damien have been very helpful in this process. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? We're good. Yeah, we're good. That was great.
Well done.
So exciting.
So is that it for your team? The bond update?
Yes.
Great.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Jonathan, you have no questions, or maybe he's gone?
Nope, just great to see that first project get finished up.
Great. All right, thanks, everybody. We will move on to board members' updates. Does anybody have a hankering to say anything? Go ahead, Susan.
Well, I just wanted to remind everybody about the board candidate forum on Thursday.
5:30 to 7.
5:30 to 7 at the
I
district.
haven't seen that.
Is it in person? What are the logistics on that? I heard there was a
There
COVID
was
concern.
a sign up for that. I'm supposed to get, I was trying to see if I got it.
It's sponsored by the Aspen Times and the Aspen Daily News, not by us.
And grassroots and
And
public.
Grassroots and Aspen Public Radio.
And I Googled it and I found a link to request tickets, which are free. basically.
I've already done it, it's easy.
Online
Yeah.
tickets or
It's really
person
easy.
tickets?
Huh?
Online tickets or person tickets?
In person.
In person.
I did it online and they gave you a ticket.
Yeah.
Okay, to go.
So APR's Brent Gardner Smith is moderating, and Eventbrite is how you can sign up and attend. You can register there. You will need the vaccination, proof of vaccination. Possibly a recent COVID test.
But it will also be live on grassroots, correct?
It will be live on Resiliency Teacher.
Okay.
Our own lead Nathan Cox will be helping make sure that broadcast effectively.
I just want to make sure people knew about that.
Well, and one other thing related to that, ballots were mailed
Yes.
and should have been received already if you are registered to vote. And if not, I really suggest contacting the county to make sure that you get a ballot.
Yeah.
Everyone please vote.
And I would point out a different subject, the equity resolution draft. Susan has done her edits, I've done my edits, Dave's done some edits. If we were gonna try to review it again with Bill De La Cruz, but he's not always available. He's
We
difficult.
left several messages for Bill and we're waiting for him to call us back. And then Amy Littlejohn is also reaching out to a couple of other people, experts who do equity work, so that we can keep this moving forward in case Bill can't join.
So I would just encourage Jonathan, Dwayne, and Katie. Katie, I think you said informally that it looked fine to you, but if it looks fine to you, Dwayne?
Yes, it reported to me.
Okay, so you're fine, you're.
Well, I want to I've read it once, but I think we want to do it in the context of with a professional, so.
Right, but I think it's helpful if we've all kind of, like Susan's edits were great, they like made my grammar much better.
Well, and it just, you know, sometimes another set of
Yeah.
eyes just make things.
Yeah, so I think it's helpful if you have specific edits to go ahead and do them, and same with you, Jonathan, if you're still there.
So maybe, we should send that around just in an email so that they can find the actual document. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great if you send them the edited version. But it sounds like Dwayne's fine with that. So it's just Katie and Jonathan at this point. Okay. Jonathan, do you think you're fine with moving forward with the version that you've seen? Or do you want to do some edits?
Well, I think if we're gonna move forward and pass it on to Bill, that's fine. And then, I mean, I'm sure we'll have opportunity to do feedback along the way.
We're not confident we're gonna get Bill. He seems really busy. So I thought if we did as much as we can ourselves and then see what a moderator can lead us to change our universal version.
Okay,
So
well, I
this-
think then let's just set a date by which we should get our comments in and then move forward.
let's say by the next meeting, maybe we'll have heard back.
Actually, we just heard
Okay,
from
that's
Bill
fair.
De La Cruz.
Oh,
We're
fair just
talking
heard.
Thursday at 3:30.
Oh.
3:30.
Great, great. So,
And that doesn't speak to when he might be available for us, that's to speak to when you're talking. Yeah.
great, perfect. We're moving forward. Excellent. Any other board comments? I think, no, not Dwayne.
I just did want to say one thing is that in the housing committee, I know later in the agenda, we're going to talk about the letters of intent. I was very emphatic along with Dwayne in saying we need to get the strategy document as soon as possible. But at the same time, we said we should go ahead and move forward with developing projects that can be viable under that strategy document. So that's why, and the team thought they wanted to go ahead and do that. And so we supported them bringing the LOIs forward in this meeting as an action to move forward with. So just give that preface of what happened at the housing meeting.
Yeah, are you gonna be able
Yeah,
to?
I'll talk to that when we get there.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Okay, superintendent's update.
Okay. About that. Anyway. It's up there. Yeah, it's up, how do you do? You gotta go first now. Yeah. Too many things at once. Anyway, the superintendent's update for 10/12/21. So quick COVID update was brought to my attention by a citizen that our old COVID tracker was still up. Mr. Durham very graciously took it down yesterday morning. I do want to say that we are getting COVID in the schools. We've had roughly 16 cases since September. We're tracking it internally. On our website is a link to Pickens County Health's dashboard instead, and they have a separate dashboard for schools. We have trained a team to administer the Binax Now tests on campus. We are also, reporting our negatives and positives to the state. We are working hard to keep staff and students in schools with only one minor symptom. Pickens County Health did revise their guidance again yesterday. We just found out 4:45 today that they revised it yesterday, so we haven't had a chance to evaluate that fully. There's still free testing at the airport. Hours are limited. Aspen Valley Hospital with a doctor's referral can get you a battery of tests for COVID, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff that's making people sick. And also Aspen Labs in town, they got a bunch of the COVID money. And so even if you don't have insurance, Aspen Labs can test you. We also wanted to welcome Robin Strecker, our new school nurse, who began work on Monday. And, she's enjoying drinking from the fire hose.
Dave, quick question on the COVID protocols for school. Is there an easy way that parents can find what the protocols are? Like, when does my child need to quarantine if they're outside of a school environment, for example, they've been exposed? Is there a easy reference protocol page or a place that points you to the Pickens County Health protocols?
Well, the district's webpage has that. We'll be sending that out again. Easy is the elusive word in guidance this year.
Right.
This year is considerably more complicated than last year. And as a teacher said, this time last year, we were scared and terrified. Now we're just confused. We really think we're going to be okay. We believe that we're doing the right things, and the layers of mitigation, we believe in those. And, thank goodness we're not having all the hubris that other districts are having, and that we're focusing on education. So we're very, very grateful for that. And it's because of the layers of protection in place. It is very confusing right now as to the guidance. Currently, if you're down to one symptom and you're improving and you have a negative test, we want you to come to work. We want you to come back to school. And if you have multiple symptoms and if you're running a fever, we really want you to stay home and work with your primary care physicians. So this year is a lot more complicated than last year, but so far, we've only had one quarantine, 12 students at the middle school, all unvaccinated. Had exposure to an adult with a breakthrough case, very unfortunate, but we were able to get them back into school much sooner than we could last year. So unfortunately, it's just in some respects, even more stressful this year for parents, for kids, for teachers than it was last year.
Because it's confusing.
Well, and it's confusing, and the guidance keeps changing.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
A flow chart might be helpful.
Oh. Don't ask for that flow chart. Don't ask for the algorithm, Mrs. Bush. Please don't do that. Anyway, Kiki, Levin, our communications person, did simplify it quite a bit, but now with the new updated guidance, we have to see if it's still on. So.
Okay.
But we expect to be sending that to all staff in the morning and then families in the afternoon. But we will be discussing it with Pickens County Health in the morning as well. So I wish we had easy. I really do.
Could you just speak to where the 16 cases are in population wise? Are they, which schools, vaccinated, unvaccinated?
Unvaccinated, vaccinated adults and students. So sprinkling across the organization. So, I mean, based on the number of breakthrough cases, I question the 1 in 5,000, the 1 in 10,000 that I've seen in national news. Because our N is so small, and so many of the adults that have experienced COVID have had both vaccinations. I will say many of our staff are seeking the booster shots, and so that's very much appreciated by our staff. And people are traveling all the way to Target and every point in between to get boosters. But as you know, educators are eligible for boosters.
Well, they were some of the earliest vaccinations, so the time frame is, January.
Yeah.
It's appropriate for it to start.
Yeah. Now, the other problem is some of them got Moderna, and a handful got Johnson and Johnson. So those folks are still waiting. But, we are guardedly optimistic that things will get better when and if and when the youth vaccination begins. And we are coordinating with Bacon County Health to be a vaccination site.
To plan for that.
So we're already trying to set that up.
It's been 3 weeks now since they submitted data, so we should be planning.
We are planning. So anyway, that's the COVID update. And of course, we do want to welcome Robin to our team. She brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to us. I don't believe she's with us tonight, but she's phenomenal. And if you get a chance to say hello, she's an awesome member of the Aspen School District. So she has at least, I think she has 2 children in the system. So academic improvement update, we can't go too long without one of those. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Mulberry to talk about academics.
Thank you, Dr. I just wanted to, first of all, thank somebody who were a part of this. We had a chance to review this with the DAC. The DAC had a review of the full plan. Dave has asked that I be sparing my comments tonight. The last review of the plan took an hour and a half. So we will do some highlights for you this evening. So just let me start with that. And a big thank you to the members of the DAC that won the preliminary team, Anna Zane, Susie Zemet, Krista Giesel, and Christopher Laws that really helped take a look at help us to design our performance targets and some of the work that the underlying work that had to be done there. And a big thank you to staff member Zoe Stern, who actually came in on a Sunday to help me do some design together. So a lot of thank yous there. And after that, we did actually present the full DAC last Friday, and I gotta say, it received a glowing review. So they're very happy about the direction we were going with this step. So just a couple of things about the priority performance work that we did. It was kind of a shill attempt at the improvement plan this year because we knew which improvement strategies we were going to do. Typically, when you do an improvement plan, you actually go out and you look for the data pieces and find the things that need to be improved. What we had the advantage of this year is we had the curriculum audit and some of the preliminary work that had already been done last year to identify those targets. So we knew where we were going with our major improvement strategies. You can see those listed here. And that's IB for all, K through 12, aligned resources for teaching literacy, implementing the illustrative math curriculum, grades 5 through 8. The things that we looked at that would address were lack of curricular alignment, K through 12, which is one of the major root cause problems as a district, lack of substantive tier 1 and tier 2 interventions. And then we had something that was aspirational, which is students are not meeting the same levels of achievements of matched schools on the PSAT and SAT. So those were the 3 areas that the root cause analysis that these major improvement strategies will address. When you do a school improvement plan, you have to find items that are high leverage and will work to address most of the issues that you're seeing as a district. And what we picked were obviously the IB utilization. Having a common framework and philosophy was one of the most important underpinnings that was brought up in the curriculum audit. And Joellen Killian had very expressly said that we need to find that as a district. And that is something that will be one of our major thrusts for this year. Secondly, we needed to have some actual curricular tools. So the literacy alignment has taken place by one, having wisdom at the elementary school, along with foundations, which is going to be more of a structural literacy piece. In addition to that, we've had Warren Anderson providing letters training across the district to teach people the foundations and understanding of how literacy is going together. It's fascinating work that she's been doing. And we adopted the ARC reading curriculum for the middle school. So those are the literacy alignments that we're doing. And finally, illustrative math in grades 5 through 8. That is going well. We had a chance to talk to them this week, actually. Amy and I were on a couple of them. So we're still getting that implemented. We should have some results preliminarily from all of the digital data pieces that are being collected for those curriculum pieces pretty soon. I can give you an update on that. But that's the curriculum or UIP in a nutshell. If there's any questions about that, we also have identified targets that have to be met for each one of those groups. We'll keep you apprised on how that is going as we go to the school.
And one of the interesting things to share from this, that Farron shared with me the other day, is some of our super users of the illustrative math curricula that are actually in the high school.
That's correct.
And so we're very, very pleased about that. We know that illustrative math is a very powerful foundational course. It's one of the best in the country by independent ratings. And for our math teachers in high school to embrace it has been very much recognition of how good the program is.
They actually had a chance to attend the training in the year, and not only did they adopt it to the algebra class, which we want to have some crossover between high school and middle school, they decided to use as their intervention for a pre-algebra class for the students that weren't ready for that with Dan Pearl and his group. And finally, Kiffer Berg has adopted it for the Algebra 2 curriculum now as well. So now we've seen kind of organic growth of that, just as Dr. Boss said, around that. So very excited. Yeah.
So third question, you mentioned that there were some metrics that you presented to the DAC in terms of ways that you would track some of these. Could you share those with us, perhaps?
I think that would probably, you know what I'm going to do is I think now that we have an actual UIP, and I gotta say, it's been a long time coming. There hasn't been one written since 2016. So much of the previous performance work that you typically do in a UIP to evaluate whether or not you met targets was almost impossible for us to do. So we're starting from scratch. So I think as part of our data updates, when we do the school data updates, we will include that with those pieces. It just makes sense. And then we'll do that quarterly.
Sort of shortly after the next star.
Yeah, right. So, yeah. We still have some work to do to get the assessment pieces, the common assessment pieces that we're doing with the literacy and math pieces. And as soon as we get them up and running, we should be able to give you some updates on them.
So have we gotten to the point where those 40 programs at the elementary school that we wanted to sort of condense, it was recommended by the auditor to condense to more like 3 or 4? Have we done that sort of work?
We've reduced a lot of the materials in the elementary school. And in fact, some of our really dynamic educators took a whole bunch of this stuff that we're not using anymore to a school in Arizona. We donated it to a Title I school in Arizona. So I think they took at least one suburban full and maybe 2 down and dropped it off. So they volunteered to do that. And our teachers at the elementary school removed a lot of the old stuff because the new stuff is consuming quite a bit of space. So they out with the old and in with the new, but hopefully Ashley can speak to that in a little bit.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this too. So the performance targets that you have to have in the UIP, and this is something I had to explain to the DAC as well, have to be the areas where you not make the state average. You don't have to address areas that you make the state average. So that's the requirement behind the UIP. We had one aspirational goal, that was to meet the match schools, because I just want to make sure that this is clear. The high school met all those targets. That's aspirational. We're trying to meet the match schools. Our areas of need and priority are the 4th and 5th grade ELA and math, and the disaggregated groups, which we have 56 kids that were tested at CMAS and disaggregated groups. That includes minorities, pre-reduced lunch, and children with diverse learners and special ed. 5 of the 56 met or exceeded targets. So we have a lot of work to do there with those disaggregated groups. So that is the area of focus this year. We have to meet with those measures.
Aaron, one quick question, and I'm not trying to belabor any of this at all, but almost post-mortem type of thing. A body of work that yielded a collection of emerging lead indicators that we rallied around. It was a few years ago.
Yes.
It was just prior to getting into the pandemic. There's a body of well-studied and then supported leading indicators that can help drive towards our academic achievement measurements. What's happened to that body of work?
So that body of work is really been paused for now, Dwayne, and if you can remember, replaced the ends reporting before, and they were looking at third grade literacy targets, they were looking at attendance and grades in sixth grade, and then they were looking at, I'm trying to remember what all the criteria.
Third grade reading,
Yeah,
fifth grade math.
yeah. So we can look at those targets, and they are research-based, and they can be a part of that, but I do think, we could certainly review that and revamp it for future meeting. Right now, we've got a couple of things that are on fire, in particular those secondary groups and some grade levels. But it should be a great way for us to start to predict how we're doing the school. That work will not be lost.
Well, I think we have as one of our goals, right, to help come up with these academic indicators. And certainly the past work that we've done should be considered as part of coming up with that next step within the context of the IB, which may have changed the relevance of some of those.
But it's something that we bake into our vision, and work that Dr. Bob is going to have us do as a district. I can't imagine we wouldn't have some sort of metric there. So that'd be a possibility for us to use that there.
And didn't your UIP, didn't the goals go beyond making state requirements?
Oh, yes. So we became aspirational in the sense that we were going to meet our match school scores on PSAT, SAT. And remember, you do have to keep it small. You can't address everything all along the way. With a UIP, they want us to have 3 high leverage targets, typically 4, no more than that. So you do have to pick that for the state. And obviously, we're under the gun in a couple of areas.
When is all this work due by, or what are the deadlines for the state?
This Friday.
Good work.
So we're right in there.
And when does that get evaluated then?
So they'll evaluate it. I kind of hedged our bets there too. I met with Erin Lofton last week with CDE, so she could review the plan and give me some edits last week on some things that she'd like to see in order to have another meeting for this week to do the final edit before I submit. And so I have a good feeling about how we're going to do with the state, and they probably will still come back with recommendations. But we welcome that kind of scrutiny, and we hope that we can meet what they want us to do.
Great, thank you.
Hey, Theron, I wanted to ask, we had a couple of years back, there was a real issue with the third grade reading portion of this. I know you talked about alignment here. Is that something that continues to be a critical area, or is something that we've advanced and now kind of just evolves into something else, into the alignment portion?
I think that the alignment, Jonathan, will be, we still have, I think, a lot of work to do around that. I think that will be the primary job of our IB groups in setting up unit plans for grade levels and getting that work done and bringing together the resources that we just adopted and trying to get that ubiquitous across the grade level. Because just like we were talking about, that huge amount of separate work that was going on in the different grade levels will start to become aligned as the PYP and NYP coordinators start to coordinate that work, both with the grade level teams and the content level teams district-wide.
We have to have a.
Okay, well, maybe I would just suggest that just before you submit it final and make sure that we have that point covered. I wouldn't want that, because it is such an important thing in terms of progression after, later on in all the subjects, to make sure that we have that sufficiently resourced and targeted to make sure that it gets taken care of.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
There's someone in our audience, I don't want to put her on the spot, but she happens to be a professional educator. Do you have any comments you would like to?
I'd be happy to help with that. common assessments, the formative, not, I'm invested in formative assessment, not summative. So if you need any, I'm happy to help with that. There's a lot of, all I can say is formative assessments. I'd be curious what you're going to use, and a lot of the packaged or bought ones are, if they're misaligned, they're not going to give you the information you need to adjust instruction. So I'm happy to spend a lot of years in that, so I'm happy to help with you.
Well, and I think that the very first step for us with common assessments is to have one. And I think that's been a struggle for the district for a while. And I think that, we will be creating those as we go. And I would welcome that kind of.
Well, the difference between benchmarks and formative, we can talk about, but I remember, I don't know if Blaine was referencing this, but I remember about pre-COVID, I came to a presentation and it was all color coded and up there. And it had everything but the kitchen sink in there.
That was strategic planning.
Is that what you were talking about?
Dwayne, you're talking about the 10 new indicators. we
No,
adopted.
it was just
I don't know.
successor indicators. I'll share them with the board right now, and you guys can take a look at them.
Well, and I guess the question too, the thing to keep in mind with all this is, all of this is COVID affected in terms of the starting points for all of this stuff. So while we can go back to where we were pre-COVID on 3rd grade reading and 5th grade math, we have a kind of a whole new starting point.
Well, do you have a universal screener? That's what you need, a universal screener for that? Right? I mean, that's what you're asking for, and that's exactly right. You have a universal screener, and then you align your formatives for that. Yeah.
And so far, we've defaulted to STAR for that. And so that's, yeah. And so that because there hasn't been anything more.
Dibbles.
And Dibbles, thank you. More detailed than that. And we presented that last year, I believe.
For both literacy and math?
Both
For
literacy.
STAR and Dibbles.
Not Dibbles for math.
No.
Not Dibbles for math.
Okay, thank you, Barb.
in math and
Thank you, Barb. All right, and are we done with your?
No, there's, I think the principles are next.
Principals talk a little bit.
Yay. Yay.
It's always the mystery.
Would you like me to go next? Just to tell everybody?
Start with
Ashley. Okay. Yeah, so I have my update kind of focused around wit and wisdom and the literacy initiatives. That's been the last month where our teams are really working hard. Our teachers are working hard in collaborative planning times with our literacy coordinator, Lori Anderson. We just spent the last couple of weeks, Lori took a full day meeting with every grade level to do the module study before the implementation of the first module. So that happened about 3 weeks ago in Wit and Wisdom. And it's, they used a protocol specified by Wit and Wisdom to really do backwards planning. So you're starting out with what the end game is and then working backwards in your planning of those lessons. And, or it's not really planning, it's really understanding of the lessons. The lessons are all very thoroughly planned in Wit and Wisdom. They make a real point in saying that there is extensive research and planning that's gone into these lessons, and it's really all about the implementation. And so it's really doing the module study is studying the module, studying what the assessments are and what the outcomes for students are, and then how will you get there. And then after that, she's really been digging in with teams into looking at like the questioning arc that like happens throughout the whole module. What are those like key essential questions that are asked in each of the lessons, and then digging more minutely into the actual lesson study themselves. So those team planning times have been really valuable. And teachers are giving up their quote unquote prep time, their personal planning time to be able to work as a team because we find it so valuable. And it's an experience too, I think, that came out of that audit that was done prior to my arrival, but talking really about building in those collaborative planning times. So we are much to the appreciation and also the added stress, really making sure that those are built in every week. And, but overall, the feedback from both Foundations and Wit and Wisdom has been very positive. For the past 3 weeks, our grade level teams have been partnered with specialists to implement foundations in a co-teaching model. We did this because we wanted everyone to go in feeling like they were supported in being novice in this new curriculum. We have one new teacher who had experience with foundations in the past. And I have had foundations experience for the last 15 years in schools that I've worked with. And so knowing that this would be kind of a safe place to learn from one another. We're taking the data from a foundation screener that we did, along with the weekly data and the observations from both teachers working together. And tomorrow, we're actually going to be going through with our MTSS team and looking at that data so that we can formulate really directed teams to use during our WIN time, which stands for What I Need, where kids will be grouped at their just right foundations level. Foundations, as Theron kind of alluded to, is kind of this core phonics, phonemic awareness, word study program for K to 3. And we're actually even going to probably be having some of our 4th graders do some of that level 2 and level 3 foundations work, because we're noticing that there's a lot of lacking skills there. So anyway, tomorrow's going to be a really exciting day where we're looking at all of that data that our MTSS team has put together. And our plan then after fall break is to hit the ground running with these small targeted groups. We might have some 2nd graders that might be in level 3 foundations. We might have some that are in level 4 foundations. We might have some that are some that are right at their grade level, but need a smaller group where they can have more direct teacher attention. So during that What I Need group, we're flooding the grade levels with our literacy specialists, our CLD teacher, and special education teachers as well to kind of support that. And we're really excited about this model that we're going to be using for foundations. Wit and wisdom, I think the thing that comes to that's most notable about wit and wisdom is the academic rigor and high expectations. So not only do we have the consistency of curriculum from K through 4 to 5, but we also are noticing that it's just rigorous. One comment, we were looking at student work with the 4th grade team a couple weeks ago, and one of our veteran 4th grade teachers, Katie Fox, said, I've never seen this quality of writing at this time of year. This may happen at the end of 4th grade, but never have we seen this high quality, organized, coherent writing. So that's really exciting to hear, because we don't even know fully, the extent of the program. We're just learning it. So that's really exciting.
Yeah.
I think we're excited for Great Minds to come out on Monday and to be doing an in-person training with us. It'll be our first in-person training, so that's super
They've all been
exciting.
virtual.
They've all been virtual, except for the in-house ones that we've had. So that's like super exciting to have that team come, and that team has been awesome. We're also, along with Wit and Wisdom, we're partnering with a school in Aurora called Vista Peak Exploratory, and they use both Wit and Wisdom and foundations. They're in the 3rd year of implementation. So we have a site visit planned for November 3rd, and some of our 5th grade teachers are going to be joining. We have 12 staff altogether from the district that are going to be attending, including our literacy coordinator, literacy specialist, CLD teacher, and our MTSS and PYP coordinator, and then a representative from every grade level. So we're gonna head down there. They're gonna head down there on the evening of November 2nd after school, spend all day November 3rd. And we're planning with that principal there and the teachers there so that we can have some pre-conversations, some observations, and then some post-conversations. We're hoping that we'll be able to zoom in our grade level teams that can't go physically. So we're still in the process of kind of working out those logistics, but that's really exciting. So, and that's just, hats off to Lori Anderson again for creating that connection with that principal down there and having this kind of sister school that we can go back and forth. Our hope is that one day we're going to be that school that people want to come and visit, but we recognize too that we're new at this, and so we're not there quite yet. Also, so that's it kind of on the literacy front where we are. It's very exciting. And this month, as far as PYP is concerned, we're focusing on the learner profile. We are principled. And so we're learning about what it means to be principled in our morning announcements, in our morning meetings, and throughout the day, lunch, recess, and all of that. And we'll culminate at the end of the month with another all-school community meeting to kind of recap and have students share what they learned about being principled, and then kick off our next month's learner profile, again, that we'll focus on. So that's where we are on those exciting kind of new curricular changes that kind of go along with our district goals there. We are still in need of some paraprofessionals to support our SSN programs and our significant special needs programs, and an additional school counselor, which was funded by AEF, and we'd love to be able to hire someone for that position. Daily substitutes and building substitutes would also be helpful.
All call.
Although I do enjoy, I was in third grade yesterday, I've been in art and other classes, but.
Wow, you're doing a lot of work.
We're busy down there at the elementary school. Yep, no grass growing under our feet.
On,
Good stuff.
great, thank you.
Prince
All right,
William.
I was like, on to middle school. So as Ashley said, our fifth grade teachers use wit and wisdom as well. So they are a part of that continued curriculum adoption, implementation, and planning to execute the best ways possible. We also have literacy in grades 6 through 8 with the American Reading Company. And I've got to say, American Reading Company is surpassing our expectations in on-site professional development, remote professional development, and just support and coaching. So right now, there's a lot of really positive energy about that 6 through 8 literacy implementation. We just got off another call with them a few moments before the board meeting, but really the assessment of the beginning of the year, we know where every kid is reading and what's next in their reading ability. And it's pretty incredible to see the span of achievement. We have kids that are extremely high and talented in their reading skills, right where we would expect them at grade level, and then some kids with significant reading deficits. The great news of the programming is it's designed to have that small group and individual attention, as well as the whole class standard. So we are putting 90 minutes a day into literacy at the middle school level. And 30 minutes of that is really targeted to individual needs of kids, and 60 minutes of grade level standards and expectations. And that comes with growing pains, because that's a big push and a big learn. But the support we've received from our on-site coordinator has been fabulous. We are also looking at bringing in on February 18th, another district-wide professional development trainer on planning instruction for rich literacy. I can't think of the person's name. Forgive me, it's gone from my head. But another literacy expert to really share with all of our staff important literacy devices and techniques and strategies at the secondary level. Because oftentimes secondary teachers don't feel like reading experts. And so we want to build that expertise for sure. So that part's been really fabulous and exciting. And we're also going to really look at that independent reading level practice, bumping down into 5th grade science and social studies. So we're hitting up there for, can we purchase a few more things? It's the never ending knock out there in store of getting the tools into people's hands to really have kids become really solid readers in both fiction and nonfiction texts, and really building those skills of our teachers. So super exciting that way. As you've talked about the illustrative math rollout, you know, everybody's still learning and growing and really trying to use that data to drive the instruction. I think in response to COVID, we see kids who've exploded in a very positive direction, kids who've maintained, and some kids who've fallen off. So that need for differentiation is greater now than I think ever across our school and across the country, actually. Along with that, we've been making lots of schedule adjustments at the middle school, you may have heard. Just trying to find the magical balance of what's the right amount of time. So we're sticking with the 90 minutes of literacy instruction. We are gonna increase time in math. We tried an experiment with partnering We are matching the high school schedule with the block piece, but the difference is we're seeing core instruction in every subject every day. So we've broken our schedule into some very complicated chunks, and it's a little maddening some days. But we tried to partner math and language, modern language or world languages together. It's not working for either of us. So we want to extend time in math as well as extend time in world language. So we're going to break those apart for second quarter. Math will have about an 85-minute chunk of time as well to really dig deep into that differentiated instruction. And world language will have its own 45-minute or 43.5-minute world language.
43.5.
I know, I facetiously say that, but one of the things, I didn't build a structured passing time into our schedule because we have kids moving at all different times. So we don't ring bells, we tell time by the clock. Every clock in the school is different. But we are going to add a structured passing time for second quarter into our schedule. So that timeliness of kids exiting a class and getting to a class will be a little more formalized in that piece. And we're going to also add a morning check-in time for kids. Most grade levels really wanted to do it. We had it around the lunchtime and we just didn't give kids enough time to eat. The great news is kids eat here in Aspen more than in other places. I was told 20 minutes was enough time. It's really just not. So the line is just too long to get school lunch and sit down and have it. So we're going to take that community time, bump it to the morning and extend the time for lunch and a little bit of recess time as well. So that never evolving or ever evolving schedule is just a continued piece. We are going to continue to have a schedule committee that will meet and make recommendations for next year. As you remember, I was building that schedule kind of as the brand new principal without knowing kids, without knowing teachers. So we're going to work together to propose for next year what that will look like in the future. Lots of new people, lots of good things going on instructionally. We are bringing aboard an AmeriCorps Math Corps member that'll start November 1st within our school. And it's a new program to Colorado. I'm told it's an evidence-based math tutoring program that will include up to 90 minutes of tutoring a week in partnered pairs of kids. So looking at data, who needs that extra support and help. And so have that training set up tomorrow with the AmeriCorps folks, as well as then, orienting that person to our staff starting November 1st. They'll be on site full time through May, which is super exciting and fun. I'm told our candidate is an Aspen graduate who's in a kind of a gap year situation. So that'll be kind of fun. I don't have a clue who it is yet, but I'll know tomorrow. And I think that's kind of fun. They recruited that on their own and then found somebody here in the community to do that piece. So we'll work out those details and I'll share updates of that going along. We've had recent success with some hiring, but like Ashley was saying, that need for substitute or guest teachers is alive and well. It gets old really fast when you look at the board and you're begging people to give up their planning time to come and help out. They get paid for that extra duty, but it still is just a challenging piece. So I'll call everywhere for anybody who's got time to give in that guest teacher arena. The PD coming up, NYP, super excited. That'll be Monday's day, along with the Wit and Wisdom for our 5th grade staff. And then just continuing to look at the mental health supports for our kids. As you know, we had a suicide of one of our students. So really partnering with our community partners on education and outreach to students, to staff, and to families. So working with the Aspen Family Connections on some parent education pieces, some student education pieces, as well as some staff. We had great support from Lion Springs Hope Center, every other agency that really came forward to support our kids and that continued support to our kids and our staff. So employee assistance, it hits hard when you lose a student. And so not what anybody ever wants to do again. So really looking at suicide and teen depression and what do we do about that? How do we look at the signs and how do we do better work in the future for everyone's wellness? And then just extracurricular, we have the most amazing parent volunteer, John Siebold, coordinating our Lego League. We have 70 kids that Theron and I wandered through, many of them yesterday after school. they've organized parent volunteers and community volunteers and high school students. So November 6th, I will be recruiting everybody on the planet to come help because we will host the Lego League tournament. And that's a really exciting thing. I'm like, really, not my first year, but we're gonna do it. But the amazing efforts and seeing the kids really building and doing that piece. We're starting a lunch boxing club. That's a new thing for me. I know, I have that same look, Katie. But there's some kid interest in it, scholarships available. That'll be a lunch club activity. Girls volleyball wrapped up with their tournament last weekend, and football's at home tomorrow on the middle school or on the middle school field. So anybody that's out there, it is not boring at all.
I have two questions.
Absolutely.
One, with all those people doing Legoland and John Siegel may burn out, do we need to consider Lego League?
Lego, that's my Facebook.
Right. Do we need to I'm sure you would have thought of, do we need to consider having a director instead of a volunteer?
So yes, but then John took it on and ran and got great community support. We did put it out to staff. We also just hired an electives teacher who we're hoping to groom into some of that Lego robotics arena. She worked with Carolyn Hansen, the former Lego League name that you all know, at Anderson Ranch during a couple summers. So she's gonna pick up probably some of that programming as we go forward. She's really a master of fine arts human being, but there's some Lego robotics in her, under her belt as well.
And my other question was, you, with the 90 minutes of literacy, which is awesome, is there writing included in it? It's not all reading.
It is a full comprehensive literacy curriculum, so it's reading, writing, speaking, and listening. That's great.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, I have a couple. First up, just the comment on the robotics thing. Jeannie Seibold and John Seibold both are
Yes,
I
please,
mean, they
thank you
are-
for getting Jimmy's name. My
it
name
is-
was blank.
remarkable to have parent volunteers spending every afternoon in school doing this. So I would love to see the discussion as we go through the year of returning robotics to part of the curriculum and not an after-school activity. Because while we're touching 70 kids through 4 grades, I think we were touching a lot more kids when it was a class, when it was part of the curriculum. So thanks to John and Jeannie, but also let's see if we can't figure out a way to get that back as part of the core curriculum. The second question was the follow-up on last month's update on advanced math. Because I know you said that you were sort of working that out and what that would mean and for those kids that aren't on grade level. Could you give an update on kind of where we are?
Absolutely. So we've continued to solicit for an advanced math section teacher. We have moved kids who are advanced up in grade level. So we have a lot of kids working up a year already. We are offering the advanced, or the 8th grade math is the core curriculum. And then we have 2 sections of algebra offered at school for kids that are ready for that challenge. So we've been doing the assessment pieces, but we have a targeted group of 7th graders who are interested in pursuing hitting algebra readiness by next year. So we're gonna build that in probably as an elective during the day. We were looking at, is it a before school, is it an after school, or is it in the school day course offering? It's hard to find folks that want to commit to either end of the day right now. So I think every person that's walked in with any sort of math knowledge, ask John and Jeannie, they'll tell you, I was like, so do you have any interest? But just every human being about, can you pick up that advanced section? So we're still working on that, that who will it be?
Okay.
Who's the lucky human that's gonna teach that section? We did some outreach to the high school folks about, do they have any extra bodies? Because right now enrollment is up and our staffing is not. So that's that piece of 40 extra kids makes things pretty tight. Our class sizes are larger than they have been in the past, at especially the 7th grade level.
So given that there's not an extra body to teach, is the possibility of taking those kids and putting them in a regular class together and progressing a regular core math class with the kids that are interested in that algebra readiness program? Is that a consideration or is it too complicated?
it's a challenge philosophically that we're still embarking upon, I would say. So really, truly, how do you condense curriculum to get kids there? It's a shift that we're still continuing to work on. I would say world language and math are those two areas that we're really looking at. How do we do instruction in those two areas? And I don't have an absolute answer on that yet. But that is the project to continue to pursue.
And then just one other really complicated thing, which is related to the high flex program that we talked about throughout last spring. Given that it's mid-October and AVSC and stuff is starting up, where are we on that and implementation?
So teachers right now are preparing their Google Classroom piece for what would it look like if a student is not in class. So there's many teachers that have their, here's what it looks like if you're virtual, here's what it looks like if you're in person. That is not universal across our school just yet. I also reached out to Colorado Digital Learning Systems as a vendor of online curriculum in support of like truly designed online curriculum. So Dan Patterson and I talked briefly again yesterday, and he and I are going back and forth with ideas on what that could look like. Traditionally, CDLS supports schools, especially smaller schools, in those courses that can't be offered because you have either a small number of kids taught by highly qualified teachers, taught to be in a virtual experience. You can use their teachers, you can use your own teachers, or you can do a hybrid of both. So that's the outreach direction that I'm going, because the piece of record that 60-minute in classroom lesson and watch it later is not well designed for the true learner who's at home doing it differently. So that's that piece that we're trying to get in place right now for our primarily AVSC kids, but also for any kid that needs an acceleration or a support, which is great stuff.
So that would be, it's just to make sure I understand, it's a program sort of outsourcing that, whatever class work they're missing because of their schedule leaving early. We're looking to the state's online program to support that for those kids.
Yep, CDLS is just one of many that the state supports, and it's one that I've had the most experience with.
So is that an evening thing then?
They can
Or
access
they
it
can do
anytime they want to.
Okay.
So it could be early mornings, could be midday, could be after school. And then one of the AVSC parents I met with yesterday, the day before, they all were together. It must have been yesterday because they did it on Tuesday. We didn't meet on Sunday. Was talking about the Monday all day schedule. And those kids will have a chunk of time. She asked if parent volunteers could run that study hall so kids could be doing their online work and not be misplaced. And I love that idea.
Because they're not training on Mondays, so they have empty class time.
And I'm told that historically, sometimes they were told they couldn't be on campus at all.
Yes, they were, yeah.
That seems really unusual to me. As the principal of a school.
It caused a lot of problems for parents where they had, all of a sudden, because it was a Monday and the ski club wasn't training, then they had a child that didn't have a place to go.
Yes, I kind of think the safest place for kids is in school. So we're working on that piece. So we talked about AVSC families rallying together to say, hey, how can we help support this? We started a volunteer program. Alyssa, our PTO human mom, has recruited, we have 2 parent volunteers every day at lunch recess. It's the most phenomenal thing. Today they were there to watch the giant tent blow in the storm. Alyssa's like, I'm glad it was me there. Yeah, that is a little frightening today at lunch recess, but it was all good. But those parent volunteers are organized now forever. They've all committed to a couple hours a month, they have their calendar. So we'll probably rotate something similar with the Monday all day. So and they're not at home alone.
Great, that's awesome. Thank you. Sorry for all the questions.
All good. Anybody else?
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thank you. Jonathan, I don't know if you're still with us. Any questions? I don't think he's there. Okay, great, thank you.
No, I'm still here, but I do need to knock off now. So I just wanted to thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
All right, bye. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye, Jonathan. Certainly not last but not least, Sarah, are you online?
Yep, I'm here. I will be pretty brief. I'm not feeling 100%. We have completed all of our STAR reading and math assessments. Those results have been mailed home to parents, and English and math teachers will be going over those results with parents at parent-teacher conferences. Exciting this week that we've begun our formal peer observation model. So all departments during their common plan time will be observing a social studies teacher. And so we're basically going to have all departments be observed throughout the year so that we can get a sense as a community, what it is, what happens in other content areas, how do people, what does really high quality instruction look like, so that we can ground our discussion in best instructional practices. All teachers in a push to really focus on even more literacy. All teachers are doing a reading measure of student learning, and we'll use STAR data. But the purpose there is for all teachers to be cognizant of pre-reading strategies, vocabulary, annotation, some of the metacognition that goes into reading, and then how you access different texts. So nonfiction dense, science textbook or history textbook versus a novel versus poetry, just to try and really improve people's reading. In terms of writing, we did start a writing lab this year, and so that is staffed by English and social studies. And so students in all disciplines, there's a process where if they're working on some kind of writing, the teacher would identify an area of need and send them to the writing lab. Right now, we are down an English teacher, so that is putting a little kink into covering the writing lab and covering for an English teacher. Fingers crossed we can get somebody in here sooner than later. Right now, the English department and myself have been covering those classes and teaching, so we are hopeful we can get someone in there by November 1st. We, in an effort to be really globally minded, we have been doing the announcements in as many languages as we can drum up, mostly French, Spanish, and English, but also Romanian and German, just because I have a very multilingual front office. So again, just trying to get kids used to the fact that in most places in the world, the default language is not always English, which really goes with the IB learner profile in terms of communicators, where it's not just about effective communication in one language, but it actually goes so far as to say, effective communication in 2 or more languages. Our IB diploma students have turned in the first draft of their EE. Our college application process, October 15th is a big deadline. And then November 1st is another big deadline. So that's really exciting for our seniors. And I think that's really it in terms of our academics. In terms of social emotional and addressing those needs, we did complete the IntelliSpark assessment. One, it was a get to know you assessment where students just talked about what they enjoyed in this world. And then we did the resiliency assessment that we administered last year, which identifies students who may be at risk for academic failure and dropout. And that really looks at well-being and connectedness and all the factors that would then contribute to, poor academic performance. And so that's a really helpful data tool that our counselors, MTSS and at-risk teams use to meet students where they are. Let's see, our homeroom hasn't really gotten off. We haven't had a lot of 5-day weeks, but they have been completing surveys there. We will have ex-ed meetings in that homeroom time. And I think the kids are coming off a great homecoming week. The dance was really successful, even if some of our athletic contests were not. I think the kids had a great time. And, this week seems so far pretty quiet. I think between homecoming last week and the idea of a week off next week, kids are just buckling down. And one thing we're noticing is that kids may have forgotten how to do school. So we are talking about how to hit reset with staff and students alike. I had an epiphany when I was teaching 11th graders And I thought, man, these guys are behaving like freshmen. And then it occurred to me the last time they were in school full time, they were freshmen. So we're going to kind of figure out how to hit reset and think about how to be students so that they can be even more successful academically. And we'll tackle that after the fall break. So I think that's about it.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. Feel better.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks.
What questions or one comment on that writing lab? That's awesome. I think it's a great addition to the high school, and I'm wondering if we might not be able to find some community volunteers. Perhaps the Aspen Writers Foundation, perhaps even seniors or postgraduates that are good writers. It might be a way to relieve staff burnout.
Yeah, I think we could, and that's definitely the goal, was to get peer tutors. So we did have a couple of IB diploma seniors that had been kind of tapped, who had been there sort of shadowing teachers. So definitely to use that peer model, which, you know, most colleges have in a writing center. But that's a great idea. I'll think about people that we could reach out to in the community. Right now, though, I just really need an English teacher. So if anyone knows anyone, please have them apply.
As long as they don't already work in Aspen School District.
No coaching.
Middle school, and elementary school.
Right, so, Wade, Susan?
I'll do it.
Oh, good, great, thank you.
Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay, and that concludes the superintendent's
Awesome.
report. Thank you, principal. Sarah, please, your letter.
Yes, Sarah.
And
Yeah, thanks for the idea.
Yeah, thank you.
Actually,
And thank you for the detailed report. It was
Yeah,
really
that was
nice to
really
hear
nice.
what's going on.
Really exciting, very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
See ya.
You too. Okay, 6.1 Liz Wilson proposal, and there were some changes from the second version. I think this is the third version. Do we want to, since we haven't had a chance to read it all, do we want to punt it to? Yeah, go ahead, David.
Just
What
the
is your-
executive summary, it hasn't changed a whole lot, it's just a little more targeted specific. I don't, both Susan and I had a question. It's kind of a mixed methods, qualitative with a certain meeting with people and interviewing them, but then also a quantitative, and I don't know, and did you see the response, Susan? I haven't seen that.
I haven't seen that she responded.
Yeah, but we asked whether the survey could be given to a far greater group of people than the original 15 we discussed for the interviews. So we just look at that.
The 15 people that are suggested, is that, who is that? Because 3/4 schools. How is that?
A number of leadership teams around the district is, you know, so it would come from teaching leadership teams, administrative leadership teams, AEA, including the pairs and the custodial side of the house. So it would be from across the district.
And would you be the one choosing?
No, I would provide her with lists of leadership, like the leadership administrators. Each school has a teacher leadership team. I would provide those to her. And AEA would provide a list of leaders in the Aspen Education Association. And then she would figure out a way to randomly select from those
So
groups.
random.
How many people were done when this original thing was done? How many interviews were there?
It was huge.
Yes, and
Yeah.
Yeah, and the online survey was available to anyone who wanted to take that. And I mean, that would be something that I feel like we need some way for anyone who would like to participate to have some input. And so that was my question to her, is there an economical and efficient way to do that? Also, I mean, I guess I assume she has the same survey, like she doesn't have to write another survey, because that's kind of what we want, is the same information. And you know, then it's just making it available and implementing it for a larger number than she's thinking about now. I think what she had thought, because we're trying to keep it small, is that if we had these 15 people represent a group, so then if you do a lot of kind of communication beforehand about that this is gonna be happening, this is your representative. Somehow you need to make sure your representative knows if you have any special concerns or, but that, to me, that sort of is another layer of difficulty in actually, you know, being able to voice your opinion. So,
We did discuss that at length with her, that we would like almost prime the pump. And, you know, so we would say, look, you know, out of this group of people, you know, Susan Moralt is gonna do an interview. Please bring her any concerns you might have. So like, you know, the custodial crew, it might be Jose, who does this building. He might be the person she's gonna talk to, take Jose concerns. You know, if you're custodial, if you're in the high school instructional leadership team, you take it to anyone of about 10 people, same at each of the other schools.
and I think that could be useful for the interview piece, but if we can make it the online questionnaire available to more people, I think that would be better. So that was my question for her,
And we haven't heard back.
well,
The other question I think that came up when we were talking about doing the superintendent 360 versus this and how they overlap is, has the overlap been pulled out of this?
Yeah, she won't be evaluating me.
I know, but the interviews and the questions, a lot of the questions in the climate and culture spoke to the district leadership. And so I guess if we're gonna do this and get the biggest bang for our buck and do both of these things, I just wanna make sure that we're not repeating in
so
an
that's a good
ineffective
question.
way.
Yeah, that's a good question for her. And maybe to clarify that we are gonna do something that would measure that piece of it, so can we focus this on?
I mean, maybe we can get more people out of it, or maybe there's a way to get the same bang for the buck if we're making sure that we're not repeating stuff that we're doing in another way.
Yeah.
It's important to get that information, but I'm not sure it's important to do it twice.
I bet she can figure that out. She's clever.
So I would recommend we just kind of table that and not move it to action yet, but maybe Susan and I could catch up with Liz and then we can really polish this up. We'll approve it on the 26th.
Sounds good.
The only other question I have about it is making sure that at some point, too few people or too little feedback makes it kind of a waste of money, right? Like either we get a certain amount of data, and we talk to enough people that it's worthwhile, or if we're doing it in too small a scale, if we're not really getting an authentic voice of the whole community, then it's not really worthwhile, right? So
And in addition, if people aren't feeling like they're able to give their voice, we're kind of damaging the culture just by going through the process. So, I mean, I think that's a piece that we do need to make sure.
and that would be speaking with her about that, to make sure that we are, you know, doing enough that it's reasonable without spending a ton of money that's not.
Well, if we send it,
The velocity of it feels fairly, what I mean by that is it going to be that quick, that beneficial in the moment, for the moment, you know, kind of a quick check. That's how I originally perceived it. I don't even know if there's much value to the 15.
Yeah.
Your point about alienating the rest of the organization and frankly, the rest of the community. So that's choppy. It seems that we could make it more just efficient and clean and just really put our energy into the questionnaire, taking into consideration the deduplication that you were just describing, have the focus being more on other aspects of that analysis of that effort we did 3 years ago, outside of the superintendent, so there's no there's no kind of that step on another, blah, blah, blah. And make this clean and more, it's kind of a higher turn rate, a quicker turn rate. I just want to get some quick data in the fly. And I also would say this, whatever we get is going to have this massive kind of disruption and cloud in the middle of it. We did a culture assessment before this big pandemic, which brought about all kinds of different dynamics. So I don't even know if it's relevant to compare back to that point in time.
Well, also the turnover
and staff.
It's not, you're not reviewing the same administration or the same staff. But your point brings up an interesting concept, which is, I think when we first considered this at the board, we were talking about it in the context of Dave's review.
Correct.
So if that's not the case, because we're doing a separate 360 related to reviews, should this be something that we're considering a complete reboot in the spring rather than rushing to get something, a quick check-in done? We're getting some sort of a quick check-in by doing a 360. Would we be better off redoing a full climate and culture check-in?
Yeah.
Maybe wait to the spring so we have more time to plan and do it the right way, opposed to trying to get it done really quickly.
How does that Liz, maybe not, might like that, because we were doing, we kept trimming scope, trimming scope, and it came, and now it's like, all right, it's narrow, might piss people off because it's not inclusive. And to your point, it's maybe not even that relevant. Maybe it's better to do and allow some time to design it together.
So, Dave, can I just ask, from your standpoint and from all administrators or people that manage others or who care about the culture of the school, I guess, what are the differences that you would get from a 360 review and a climate and culture study? And how can we make sure that we're not doubling up and we're getting both of those? That information.
Isn't it two different things? I mean, it's a personnel evaluation versus an organizational kind of litmus test of the culture. Aren't those two different things?
Well, they are two different things, but what I don't know is, are the questions that you ask similar? I mean, that's what I don't know.
I see.
Well, so I will be brutally honest and say I've never done a 360 on data. So I don't really know what those questions are, and I'm really intrigued by that. And while we're talking about it, I did talk with Max before we got the time frame. He's going to send a statement of work, and it'll be ready and available, ideally for the new board at the end of the year, this year, as part of the evaluation of the superintendent. So that's as Joanne saying, very separate sort of thing. So when I've seen organizational checks, they're mostly surveys, and they wind up like a temperature check. So here's where we are right now. It's usually just a survey. When we talked with Liz with length, the amount of interviews and stuff she did was incredible.
A lot of focus group work.
A lot of focus group work, a lot of one-on-ones.
Well, I mean, she started and then all of a sudden, everybody else wanted to talk to her. Everybody else did.
Yeah.
You know.
It sounded like she talked to just a lot of people.
She did.
So, which is awesome, but it's also a huge scope.
Yeah.
Huge time commitment.
It's a huge time commitment, it's a huge scope. And what's the end goal?
Right.
Right, and as part of my goals, which were shared with cabinet, we do have my voice, which is to take the temperature and then to start working on it in real time so that staff can give us feedback, give the principals feedback, and that they can own their own cultures of their schools. So from my perspective, on the one hand, we can take a temperature check. I like the idea, if you need it now, I think the survey is really the way to go. And we can definitely out of the survey, come up with action steps. We've done some survey work with thought exchange. That's what we should be working on. That'll be a presentation next week, or next board meeting. So that was a long way to say, I don't really know the difference between an organizational 360 and a CEO 360.
Yeah. So when Jonathan first recommended that we check in again, it was really part of evaluating, saying that he wanted to make sure we weren't diluted as a board in thinking that we're doing great. And that's all he had.
I think that Dave is doing great, actually, right?
Oh, yeah, that we think that he's doing great, and we're doing great thinking that. None of us are really doing great.
Which I think was That is the situation we were in when we had the original one. So, I mean, I think that's valid, you want to make sure that you are checking around and things aren't going without people's.
We are using more tools and we didn't have these other tools that have been implemented like My Voice and the Thought Exchange stuff at that time either. So I guess the other question that this conversation brings up is how much of this are we doing on our own through using these external tools that's gonna overlap with this type of work as well? I mean, we need to do this type of work. The question is how? And whether this is correct or whether the tools that we already have in place, or maybe it's a combination of it.
So as I think about this and as I think about the conversation, what I'm really hearing is the interest in sort of a state of the district and not grounded in something that either I or my team generate, but that are independent, third-party ways that are forward-facing, that are shared at certain points, almost like a report card for the district, right? On culture, on climate, on academics, on extracurriculars. And I think that we're putting tools in place where these could be bundled into the state of the district, the state of the administration. How are we doing as a district? And how are we progressing? And I think that's really what this conversation is about. And Jonathan and I talked about this idea, the notion of baking into practice or policy, independent, I think is brilliant, and I don't know why more districts don't do it, right? So that you know that your administrative team are doing what they say, makes a world of sense to me. Why wouldn't you? And if you work yourself as a superintendent, why wouldn't you want an independent endorsement as well as suggestions for growth?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Right?
And I think that's the piece that I think we could find really valuable is, oh, here are some areas for improvement, and we do this on an ongoing basis so that we can always improve.
And so I think if that is our goal as a leadership team of quite a few people now, why don't we talk with Liz about achieving that goal?
That's what I was thinking.
And I think that there is a way that she does this for a living,
Yep.
right? I mean, I dabbled in it to do my dissertation, that sort of thing. And I don't pretend to be a statistician. I don't pretend to be an expert in this sort of evaluation, but I do pretend to be able to call people and ask them.
I think it's a great idea to pretend. I think that's great.
A little bit of who's called me just now.
Good.
Anyway.
It's not watching our board meeting?
Yeah, that sounds great. Why don't you talk to
Why
Liz?
don't we talk to Liz? We'll set up another time. We'll go back to the well.
Yeah.
The goal is an independent third party that, and from a board perspective, the thought would be, how do we capture this process for after we're gone, for after Dave's gone? How do we put in place for those who will come after, Susan and Dwayne, a process that they know that the data they're getting is good and helpful?
It sounds great.
And using tools that we already have if it's appropriate.
Tools that we already have that are appropriate and that are designed to improve culture so that the client gets experiences.
That sounds great. Thank you. Okay,
Good.
good. Yes.
Great. And then the last thing in this project was the policy update. We called Crosby again, and we discussed a couple of things, and they're going to call us back to discuss further how they can support the Aspen.
Great, but it's looking optimistic, looking, it'll work out.
Yeah, it's almost a turnkey. We're just trying to figure out which service we need to update our policies quickly and expeditiously, so we don't have to touch everyone.
Great, yeah.
But they do that.
Great. And it's live. They update
Yeah.
important.
There's almost a monthly refresh for relevant policies that the legislatures have brought their wisdom to.
But there's also an ability to change sort of the governance model that it's not.
And so there's a final budget where if you want your own governance piece, they can help you with that.
Okay.
That's great.
And so we're trying to get them to call us back. They're short staffed too. So if anybody's looking, I'm not.
Okay. So we're going to 8.8 consent action, and then Dave, you wanted to just touch on the approved letters of intent, 8.2 before we vote, right?
Sure, so the personnel items you know and have, the letters of intent. Or no, that motion that we wrote. So anyway, we're asking you to pass a motion. I think that.
Yeah, we have it on the email, I think. It's not in the Word docs anymore, unless I got.
We wrote it in here at least twice and maybe three
It's in the
times.
bond update, directs administration.
Because it's a bond thing, and we moved the bond up there, so I apologize for that.
I can move it too.
Yeah, can you take that public content and put it down below? Because this was in the bond thing, we put it there, and then because Jonathan had to go early, we moved that. The BOE and the bond
That makes
update to the very front. So I apologize, my bad. But basically what we're asking for in the consent agenda is that you just direct me to develop 2 letters of intent, of intent. Now this describes the properties. I had a chance to talk with most of you about this. Jonathan was in the housing committee last week on September 29th. So basically we would develop 2 letters of intent with our district solicitor expressing interest in 2 properties. One that we would take by July 1, 2022, and hopefully the second would be July 2023. But these are, as Bob Daniel said, non-binding and merely expressing our interest in the properties.
Non-binding, no money down.
Non-binding, no money down.
And I think just one thing I wanted to reiterate, we had a conversation that the housing group does have a preliminary draft that they're working on of what a strategy of what they want to propose as what we need for housing. They have that. This fits within the preliminary strategy that isn't fully baked yet.
And we're going to discuss this on October 26th, both our strategy, our projected needs, as well as the housing mission and vision, as well as how people are acquiring units.
Or eligible.
Yeah, eligible for the criteria. That's
Yeah.
being used.
Right, so no
So
risk.
that would be future agenda items, but for the consent agenda, what we really want is this motion that
Right.
directs us to put a horse in the ring and get going.
So we have a motion to approve 8.1 and 8.2. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, none opposed. Future agenda items. We have Bill Gilligan's on there, and Susan, we were gonna add.
Yeah, we're gonna add a approval of Dave's contract for 1 more year.
We should vote, we should.
We will vote on but we need to get that language from Dick Bob and put it all in his evaluation so that we'll finalize that and then put that on our next board meeting agenda.
We also do financial updates.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, I think we have some deadlines coming up, where I think we're gonna be hearing from her like all the time. In November,
Yeah.
and so let's just make sure that we have those scheduled based on the dates of when she needs us to approve stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Because we'll have a mid-year and
And then how's the audit going? Are we in right now or?
we are in that. I've spoken to the auditor, so.
Okay, good. And then I would also just say, on this agenda, we don't have our GPAE, which has been that calendar that kind of keeps us on track, and so just
The master code.
good idea to just keep that in there, whether there's changes or not. What is that?
GP8E, and it's been on all the other agendas.
And it's like now it's.
Meeting by meeting for the year.
Yeah.
Calendar.
Template.
So it says, in September.
We'll look for that.
And so I mean, I completely understand, you just jumped in here, but I just don't want us to forget.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Do we know the transfer date based on the number of days required for the state to look over the election results and when all that happens.
And doesn't sound like it's always
Was
the
it
same.
19 or something? It was some weird number of days. It was, because last election, we had planned the first meeting was planned and then pushed back because it was too soon.
And I think it really is just when they kind of get it done themselves. So it may have to do with a meeting that they have. I don't know. It's not-
I guess the real question is Eliza still our election supervisor? or
She said, yeah,
whatever?
she was. Yeah.
Okay, so we need to make sure that we have. Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
But, so we kind of are at the mercy of the county, is what I recall about when that election is certified.
There's a deadline though, for sure. Like, there's a maximum number of dates.
But sometimes they do it
They
early.
have to like, I think what you're saying is their pace will govern when we can first bring in new folks to their seats.
I'm sure they're fully staffed. like
We
everybody
had to
else.
We had to change a date 4 years ago also for the same reason.
Yeah.
It was the meeting occurred too soon for that to
And
happen.
it's
We have a note to reach out to Eliza to figure this out.
Great.
Yeah, and then the other
You
thing,
could also actually ask, can election
yeah,
people,
Joyce.
there's a commissioner or someone, I don't know,
Commissioner of Elections.
yeah, for Pickens County, which administrates the school district. Election committee, and they
Dan Connell.
probably have,
Joe.
And Dave, do we have any update, or can we maybe by the next meeting on the translation services update? We had that there listed there. We were gonna find out from Aspen Family Connections whether we should be having captions for translating our board meetings, depending on how many people it would impact, it would benefit.
Well, I think also they did some.
Okay.
That's being worked on, and Zoom doesn't have a translation service, Google does. So then what we figured out is that we can get the translation up on the recorded version relatively affordably.
Well, but it was also related to the fall back to school nights and all that stuff that was translated live. I think we wanted sort of an update on how that went, how many people participated. You know, I don't think we were clear as a board that the need for the board meetings to be translated was necessarily proven. But certainly the student facing stuff was something that we had talked about understanding how to make that.
Right, and that's a pretty high priority and it's happening,
Okay.
but not 100% consistently. But we are spending a small fortune on translation services
Very much.
already.
Okay.
And we're just looking to refine that because we're at almost a 0.5 FTE for just translation services of student facing.
Yeah.
You know, IEPs,
Right.
everything we send to every parent gets translated. Every time I send something out, it gets translated. So we are at almost a 0.5 in those languages. We're easily a 0.5, maybe a 0.7.
In terms of spending or in terms of
In
time?
terms of spending and time. So.
Because I would imagine you get to.
relying on 1 or 2 staff members, and have been averaging around 20 hours. 20 to 25, just for translation services.
Wow.
And then, you know, as mentioned, in the board update on Monday, we spent some time meeting with families, which is equity outreach and feedback from families. We spent some time there with the translator. You know, it's exhausting work. You can only actually do about an hour of it.
Yeah.
You have to put the credit.
Yeah.
So, but that wasn't even one of our employees, that was a third-party contract with Ryan.
Wow.
So we are spending some money, investing some money well spent. But we should definitely put together a report on that.
And Google's free services can't help what you're talking about.
So it does, but then there are times when it has to be precise. So when Kiki sends something out, and if she can't access our translator, she'll put it in Google Translate, she'll kick it out. But that way.
Okay. All right, so we'll hear down the road. We'll hear
Yes.
shortly. Okay. Anybody else want to have any future agenda items they need to add today? We have enough. And if not, then Susan, will you debrief us?
Sure.
This meeting.
Well, really great meeting, particularly considering we have a very brand new board secretary, so thank you for coming in and
Awesome.
you know, it's not easy, particularly dealing with this and cover that this user-friendly software. And, but I think we stayed on topic, we've covered some important things, we have a kind of a nice flow with our reports. We will work on that Liz Wilson, thing so we can get that tightened up, and then, that's all, great. Good meeting, great.
I think as it relates to the principal feedbacks, that was amazing, very comprehensive, and clearly took a lot of time.
Yeah.
So we'll have to start to remind me of where we were. I wonder if there's a board in the district administration can develop kind of a tempo rhythm where maybe once a month, maybe once every other month, whatever, they kind of go a little deeper. And then those off meetings, they can be more summary. And I'm not talking about from a time perspective, I'm just trying to be respectful
Yeah.
of all the work that they're
Because I know they also fill out their reports in writing.
Yeah, maybe
And
it's just written with questions on a couple of meetings, and then maybe once every 6 weeks or so, there's a more comprehensive like they did tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a lot of work for your principals,
Yes.
and we appreciate it so much, but we don't think they should have to do it every.
Well, I don't think we want to hear it every 4 months. We gotta do deep dives into other topics as
I
well.
love every word that I
No,
heard.
well, no, but I don't think it's, yeah, no, you read my mind.
Whatever you think.
So just straight out of the gate, I was gonna, move principal updates away from bond updates. Because we like to go deep with bond and we like to go deep with academic. So I was gonna split those. But what we could do further is split it out so, it could be bond, which I think we need to do every month, because there's so much money involved.
Yeah.
And then we could do elementary 1 month, and then middle school the second one, and then
Yeah,
high school the
that's
third month. You could have more comprehensive, and they could include a couple other voices from their buildings
I think it's a great.
to share some insights.
But if they just continue to write each meeting, just so that we're just up to speed, just the nuts and bolts of what's going on in their building, we can read that. Yeah, and then they
Not intent, not extensive.
And I
just-
think if we're gonna do it every 3, you're talking about every 3 months then? Once every,
Discussing.
yeah, so I would think we want to dive into even a little more data if we're gonna do that, just in terms of where they're, instead of waiting for the full board data dump from there and on how everything's going, some more informal assessments of how students are doing. We heard, for example, about the training for the teachers, but we didn't hear, and we heard about a little bit of impact anecdotal with writing, that how it would be great to get a little more meat on that if we're gonna,
Why not, in the interest of everybody's time at this point, why don't the three of us put together a proposal?
Yeah.
And we can share that, with the board prior to the next board meeting. But I do think it makes some sense to make sure we do it and do it right. I think that, again, what we're trying to do is get an accurate picture of what's going on. And so data is part of that. But, and there's a variety of data that I think that would behoove the board as well as the community to know about it.
And especially, there's some issues that we talked about, the behavioral issues in the middle school has come up over and over again. So an update on that kind of stuff, that's not pure academics, but certainly impacts, it's family impacting and how we're performing as a district. I think that kind of stuff.
I like the fact you gotta hear about instructions.
Yeah.
It's not just data, you gotta hear about.
Yeah, exactly.
PD and
Yeah.
what's going on with that. I think that's, when you're showcasing the school, just from the principal perspective, that's gonna be very important for them to be able to tell you what's going on. I still kind of like databases being.
Well, I don't want to take it away from you.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, what I mean, it's just, I think that if they're gonna show, I like what Dave just recommended, which was, bringing in a team.
Yeah.
So like really showcase the school,
Yeah,
and you can do it.
There have been some attempts at that. prior. I was kind of watching that, once I was in the pipeline.
Right.
But they weren't very well structured and they weren't very concise or informative,
Yeah.
right? So I'd like to kind of add an element to that.
Now,
Let's not forget the cottage.
now, we have not reviewed the policies, the results policies, the Rs. And that's kind of like delving into academics quite deeply.
Yes.
And we may be switching policies, but I want us just to keep that in mind, that we haven't reviewed the Rs, and as we adopt new policies and we think about this academic rigor that we're gonna be discussing and delving into the school's presentations more, that maybe combine a lot of that, the results monitoring, which, I don't know, Dave and Darren, if you're sort of been tracking, we haven't done the Rs, the results. We've done all the other policies, but we haven't monitored the results. But I think we're doing that, a lot of that work.
In a more, I would argue in a more timely manner as well.
Yeah,
More effective, hearing how the start of the school year is going from each principal.
I mean,
you
we
know.
just don't have a lot to start with, and that's the piece that as it goes on and we have a baseline, and then we have a target, and then we can see if we made those targets, that's gonna be really important going forward. We just don't have that yet, so we haven't been able to do that, but I think you gotta keep that structure so that you're
So I'm
not.
just kind of reminding us that we haven't done it. We're talking a lot about the things that will be important when we do monitor our results.
Right, but Derek decides what the results, metrics are that we need to monitor.
Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn? Can we have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, thank you,
Thank you, guys.
Yes,
Thank you, everyone. Let's turn off the
The
recording.
Thank you, thank you.
There were some,
Thank you, everyone.
chats. Were you able to see what the chats? said?
I did not.
Anybody see
I
what the
wasn't
chats
watching.
said? Before we turn off, see what the chats, said.
Sure.
Where's the three? Oh, wow.
The video off before
Can
I
you share this?
show my butt.
Yeah. So, how do we get back to the other screen?
Yeah.
You saw that movie. It's
Okay.
That was it.
Yep, that's it.